Dear students, we have been discussing the relationship between questions and research designs. And we have discussed that there is a connection between the questions, the nature of questions of a study, and then the proposed research design. And we must be exploring a research design. We must be deciding our research design on the basis of questions to be explored, right? So in this session, we are going to discuss about the why types of questions, right? That what are the why types of questions and how could we go for deciding an appropriate research design for why types of questions in order to address why types of questions. Guys, when we are done with what types of questions, like the phenomenon is now known to us, we have explored it, and we know that what types of relationships could be there between phenomena or more than two phenomena, right? Then we would also be exploring some causation, okay? Causation, that why some variables are influenced by others, right? And then we could also be exploring, discovering that why an independent variable affect dependent variable in a study, at least one each, right? When at least one independent variable is there and one dependent variable is there. So in such a study, we are actually concerned with the causation, and causation is explored using why types of questions, right? So in order to decide the research designs for addressing why types of questions, we must be putting why, the term why, or maybe some other terms which could explore the nature of why, causation, in our questions, right? So when we are using why and we are going for causation, then our studies are causal studies. And these are causal studies when we are exploring relationships in various types of relationships. Like we may be exploring correlations, right? Or comparative causal relationship, right? Or experimental studies, right? So causal comparative studies, these are the nature of studies, these are the types of studies which are addressed, which are explored using why types of questions. Why types questions are also used in order to carry on with studies which are experimental in nature, or maybe which are quasi-experimental in nature, right? Experimental when we have different groups, two groups maybe, like one is control group and the other is experimental group, right? And quasi-experimental when we don't have separate groups, but we are using the same group first as without treatment, right? And without doing any, experiment, and then we carry on with the experiment, and finally we again test and examine the same group. So that is called quasi-experimental study. So for experimental studies and for quasi-experimental studies, we can have why questions, and we could have why questions, right? Why questions could be addressed, could be explored using both exploratory and confirmatory studies. Like we might have a hypothesis in the beginning, right? Confirmatory studies. And we could not have any hypothesis in the beginning, and we are just exploring, right? So that type of study is called exploratory. So why types of questions could be explored using both of these types of research designs. And then we could collect data using qualitative and quantitative, both types of data collection tools for addressing why types of questions. And then we could also go for basic and applied researchers for using this why types of questions.